detained hundreds of people at Guantanamo. We're cleaning up something that is quite simply a mess. The decision that I made was to order the closing of the prison camp within 1 year.
The president did not keep his promise. 2 years later, Guantanamo is still operating. Could shutting the door on the detention center really end the trauma of Guantanamo? And can the closing of a prison really liberate those it once held captive?
Ich fühle mich nicht einsam, da bin ich einsam auf jeden Fall. Welcher Mensch soll denn schon verstehen können, wenn ich von Guantanamo erzähle, wie was gewesen ist? Das kann kein Mensch nachvollziehen.
And the flag flew over Camp Delta in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where, you know, the detainees are housed, to honor all those service members and civilians who have lost their lives during the global war on terrorism, and those who continue to defend the ideals of freedom and democracy throughout the world. So I really appreciate that, because I very much enjoyed serving my country. It's painful, and it makes me sad that there are those who think my service is not honorable. If anyone Googles my name, torture will come up, because my name was put in books of all types, which of course have in its title torture. The torture team, the road to torture, the trail to torture, I don't know, all these kinds of things. People think I must be the torture lady.
And a United States prosecutor points an accusatory finger at your chest and calls you a criminal and tells you that you have betrayed your oath and you have betrayed your country and you have endangered the safety of the men and women that you swore to share your burdens with. Matthew Diaz disclosed a list of names of people at Guantanamo Bay, and he has paid a terrible price.
There was a lot of reasons for people to hate me. There is no easy answer. Guantanamo has caused a lot of heartache for a lot of different people.
We're at war. When a plane strikes the Pentagon and tries to kill people in the Pentagon, it's very personal. It sounds corny to say it was my duty, but I felt like I couldn't retire without at least offering to deploy. And I volunteered to go anywhere. It's very scary that there's these people out here that just want to destroy our way of life, our culture, our values, and not understand why. I mean, how do you win hearts and minds? How do you stop this if you don't understand your enemy?
2001 hat mein Leben geändert. Ich bin nach Pakistan gereist, damit ich in möglichst kurzer Zeit viel über den Islam lernen kann. Pakistan hatte mich sowieso schon immer interessiert. Ich war halt ja auch neugierig, ein anderes Land mal zu sehen. Dann habe ich festgestellt, dass das Krieg ausgebrochen ist in Afghanistan.
US bombing raids continue around the clock, attacking Taliban tanks and trenches north of the Pakistani border.
Ich habe mir eigentlich nichts Großes bei vorgestellt. Ich muss auch dazu sagen, dass ich damals gerade mal 19 war und die ganze Welt nicht so ganz verstanden habe. Und ich war auch kein Typ, der sich mit Politik beschäftigt hatte. Ich war kurz vor der Rückreise nach Deutschland. Ich habe viele Geschenke eingekauft. Es war kurz vor Weihnachten. Da hielt die Polizei uns an, kam auf mich zu und haben mir einige Fragen gestellt. Ich habe denen meinen Reisepass vorgelegt. Da meinten sie halt, dass ich aussteigen sollte. Das war mein letzter Moment als freier Mensch. Ab dem Moment dann haben sie mich als Geisel halt festgehalten und irgendwann an die Amis verkauft. Plötzlich waren viele Blitzlichter dort. Das waren Leute, die Fotos geschossen haben. Ich war halt der 53. von mehreren tausend. Die haben mich ganz komische Sachen gefragt, ob ich Osama bin Laden gesehen hätte. Ich hab denen gesagt, natürlich habe ich ihn gesehen. Im Fernsehen, wie jeder andere auch. Das hat sie aufgeregt. Da war mir eigentlich sofort klar, dass die nicht daran interessiert waren, wer ich bin oder ob ich wirklich unschuldig bin, sondern sie wollten mich halt zu einem Terroristen machen. Ich sollte zustimmen, dass ich ein Mitglied der Al-Qaida und Taliban bin, dass ich mit denen zusammengekämpft hätte. Ich wusste ehrlich gesagt nicht mal, was Al-Qaida ist damals. Ich bin kein Terrorist und somit werde ich das auch nicht unterschreiben. So haben sie mich von den Handschellen aus an der Decke hochgezogen. Sie haben eine Kette drum gemacht und mich an der Kette halt hochgezogen, so dass ich hing halt komplett mit dem ganzen Körper über dem Boden. Da hing schon jemand vor mir. Ich konnte sehen, dass er total blau angelaufen war. Er war schon längst tot und er hing da nur noch. Und der Verhörer fragte mich halt, ob ich es jetzt unterschreibe oder nicht. Und wenn ich Nein gesagt habe, hat er nur einfach Handzeichen gegeben. Und somit haben die mich wieder hochgezogen. Ich weiß, dass es 5 Tage gewesen sind, die ich da an den Ketten hing.
Fast jeden Tag und jede Nacht habe ich gespürt, wie er dort behandelt wird. Ich habe da ihm sofort gespürt, sofort gemerkt, ob er bestraft wird oder ob ihm gut geht. Man hat solche Mamas-Gefühle, kann ich so sagen, ja. 3 Tage lang habe ich geweint und geweint. Ich habe gesagt, das geht nicht, immer weinen und weinen. Weinen bringt nur Weinen, also ich komme ja nicht vorwärts. Habe ich gesagt, ich muss was unternehmen. Dann bin ich zu Kripo gegangen.
Die Mutter erklärte, dass Murat Kurnaz in seinem Glauben radikaler geworden sei. Es ging ja zunächst mal um die Klärung der Frage, ob es tatsächlich ein Ansinnen von Murat Kurnaz war, gegen die Amerikaner die Waffe in die Hand zu nehmen.
Und es war eine große Hektik in allen Sicherheitsbereichen. Zumal als bekannt wurde, dass die Attentäter zum großen Teil ja in Hamburg, Stichwort Hamburger Zelle, die Vorplanungen für dieses Attentat durchgeführt hatten. Wir haben dann alle unsere Antennen ausgefahren und dann kamen diese Hinweise, ja, der wollte schon immer kämpfen. Er hätte sich einen Kampfanzug und Kampfstiefel gekauft. Ja, fast explosive Erkenntnisse. In erster Linie genährt wurden durch Aussagen der Mutter.
Er soll erklärt haben, dass er die Anschläge in den Vereinigten Staaten gutheiße. Um wen handelt es sich bei Murat Kurnaz? Was ist Murat Kurnaz für ein Mensch?
Es war mit einmal der Taliban aus Bremen. Diesen Begriff, der ging ja nicht mehr weg. Das war der Taliban aus Bremen. Und alle machten, oh ja, das haben wir nun auch hier. Erst die Hamburger, jetzt haben wir das hier auch noch.
So viele Medien haben sich hier in eine Schlange gestellt, hier vor meiner Haustür. Manche haben mich so manipuliert. Murat neben eine Handgranate hingestellt, Bremer Taliban und Terrorist genannt. Ich konnte niemanden sprechen. Ich wollte auch nicht meine Kinder verletzen dabei. Ich konnte meine Gefühle niemandem aussprechen, das ging das nicht.
Ich hatte immer wieder gesehen, dass Gruppen wegtransportiert wurden. Sie waren dann nie wieder zu sehen. Bevor sie mir die Augen zugebunden haben, haben sie gesagt, wir bringen dich irgendwo hin, wo wir dich erschießen werden. So.
Very strange. Plane loads of detainees would show up wherever they came from. Some had been recovering from wounds in combat, and I mean there were just so many challenges. There may be these people, you know, whether they're bodyguards of Osama bin Laden or whatever their role is, maybe there are pieces of information that are going to make a difference. And I sat in on hundreds and who knows, maybe 1,000 interrogations, I don't know. I saw so many. It's a mind game. It's trying to elicit information a variety of different ways and playing on a person's ego, playing on a person's love of family, love of country. The two things that work is separation from your buddies and a lack of sleep. And so the detainee then becomes to rely on the interrogator, and hopefully then at some point the detainee will become so compliant, the detainee will tell you the things that you're asking about, and you'll get the intelligence information that you need.
Nachdem ich angekommen bin, wusste ich nicht, wo ich bin. Es war nur ziemlich heiß. Die machten mir irgendwann die Augen auf. Mit dem Bus brachten sie mich in einen kleinen Käfig. Wie so ein Hundekäfig halt, nur kleiner. Da waren auch keine Toiletten, gar nichts drin. Sie haben die Lichter 24 Stunden lang angelassen. Die Generatoren liefen. Es war extrem laut. So, dass ich eigentlich nie richtig geschlafen habe. Es war, als ob ich eher in Ohnmacht fallen würde vor Müdigkeit. In meinen ersten Verhören, da haben sie mich auch nach dem Namen Mohammed Atta gefragt. Das ist der Typ, der einen diesen Flugzeugen in die Türme gejagt hat. Da meinten sie, ist ja dein Freund aus Hamburg. Du wohnst ja nicht weit weg von Hamburg. So. Ihr habt auch wahrscheinlich zusammen denselben Fitnessstudio besucht, meinte er. Wenn denen meine Antwort nicht gefiel, da haben sie mich sofort umgelegt in eine Isolationshaft. Ich habe ein ganzes Jahr insgesamt alleine verbracht. Wenn man lange für sich allein gestellt ist, dann wird einem auch klar, wie viele Sachen man im Leben viel schöner machen konnte und man bereut es, dass man es nicht getan hat. Man kann sich schon fast an jeden einzelnen Menschen erinnern, gegenüber dem man sich schlecht benommen hat oder ihm das Herz gebrochen hat. Als Kind wollte ich unbedingt reich werden, damit ich schnelle Autos fahren kann. Ich habe oft und gerne getrunken und war dadurch auch schnell gewalttätig. Ich habe auch Drogen zu mir genommen. Ja, so habe ich mal gelebt. Auf der Suche nach Antworten habe ich mich mit dem Koran beschäftigt und entschieden, ein religiöses Leben zu führen.
I know at least one of his interrogations, and I may have seen more. He was associated with some bad guys. We definitely thought he could be dangerous. He wasn't an innocent guy. I'm sorry. The cover story of, I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, but I'm really this religious guy, just doesn't cut it. He certainly was not compliant and didn't want to obey the rules, and it made it difficult for the MPs to deal with. It was a very intense time. Many people felt certain there would be another attack against America. And so that's why the intensity of trying to work as hard as you could to do your part to save American lives.
A part of me wanted to participate in this war on terror or contribute in some way. I knew if I didn't volunteer for Guantanamo, there was a good chance that I could be sent to Afghanistan. I did not want to go there. It was a better chance of me coming home alive from Guantanamo to my family. Maybe a third reason would be it's career enhancing. It looks good on the record that you participated in some way in this global war on terror, and you got the medals to go with it or the ribbons to go with it, and it helps you get promoted to the next pay grade. Well, I mean, 9/11. A lot of people were killed that day. I wanted to make sure somebody was held accountable. How dare anyone on this planet do that within our borders?
We definitely have people who know things, they aren't talking, they're resisting every effort. We've tried the normal methods, so now we need something else. In Afghanistan, they were doing many more severe things, handcuffing someone above their head for hours and hours. Anytime you restrain somebody for long periods of time, particularly over their head, your organs collapsed on each other and you eventually died because of that. And so the interrogators at Gitmo, as well as myself, are thinking, oh my gosh. You can't, anyway, it's not professional to do something like that. What else can we do? And we would brainstorm, essentially. What does everyone know? I mean, what's out there? We needed additional aggressive techniques. Everyone understood that torture wasn't allowed, and obvious forms of torture, such as cutting off a finger or any of those obvious things that you couldn't do, death threats and things like that. And so, what was allowed? Well, for example, if someone said, "Oh, we have a pistol, we know it's not loaded," and we'll point it at somebody's head, no, that would be illegal. What if we built a special chair and put the detainee in it, and you're thinking, special chair, what does that mean? What about stress positions? What about making them bend in an awkward position and they can't get up until I say so? There can be a gray area. When you're being asked for legal advice, I did my best to look at the sources of the law that might apply, but I certainly wasn't an expert. I had called around asking for help and no one would help me, and so right away, you don't have to be too clever to know no one wants to touch it. We've researched, now we have to put pen to paper. And so my legal staff and I worked with very little sleep over those 4 days, but we started putting the memo together and rewriting and looking at it and legal references. And ultimately, we're happy with what we came up with.
In October 2002, Diane Beaver concludes in a classified memo that the proposed interrogation methods comply with U.S. and international law. 10 days later, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld authorizes 18 of the 22 techniques, including stress positions, removal of clothing, and the use of detainee phobias like fear of dogs. Rumsfeld does not authorize some of the harshest methods that included death threats and waterboarding.
Okay, well now we have the decisive piece of paper. Let's go. We need to, start up interrogations again now that we have guidance and policy guidance from the very top of the Department of Defense.
Es wurde einfach alles schlimmer. Ich wurde manchmal über 24 Stunden lang verhört.
At 13:25 hours, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The detainee has a close associate with and planned to travel to Pakistan with an individual who later engaged in a suicide bombing.
Da sagten sie, dass Seljuk Bilgin, ein sehr guter Freund von mir, ein Selbstmordattentäter wäre.
This morning, Al-Qaeda's suicide bombers attacked a synagogue in Istanbul. 56 people are reported dead and over 700 injured.
You said that you did not know that Selçuk Bilgin was a terrorist or involved in suicide bombing.
When I know Selçuk Bilgin, he was not a terrorist or somebody. He was exercising a lot with me together. But I never saw that he experiments with bombs or talking about it. I'm not saying he's not a terrorist. Maybe he is a terrorist.
Did he actually go to Pakistan with you?
He was on the airport in Frankfurt. The German policeman, he checked the computer. They took him to another room. That is the last time when I saw such video.
Irgendwie dachte ich vielleicht, dass es auch irgendwie stimmen muss, weil so viele Leute stehen vor mir und erzählen, dass das so gewesen ist. Er hat das getan und ihn gibt es nicht mehr und er hat Menschen getötet. Alles liegt vor. So.
I can't recall. Do we know if that friend he's talking about was a suicide bomber or not?
Yes, sir. He was a suicide bomber.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. It's in the classified portion.
Okay. I just wasn't sure.
Unbelievable. What purpose did that serve? It wasn't eliciting information. I mean, this is sadistic and this is not the product of a professional anything.
The usually jovial Jody Rumsfeld was grim as he was sworn in and promptly took responsibility for what he called a catastrophe. He was interrupted by hecklers calling for his head.
It was terrible because the Army will and has been tarnished and will be tarnished for a very long time. It's difficult to recover from something like this. I knew it was time to get out because I'd accomplished as much as I could, and I wanted to have a dog. I wanted to, have my own house and those kinds of things where I didn't have to worry about would I be deployed and what do I do. That's why I retired when I did.
Because of the embarrassment at Abu Ghraib, there was more focus on Guantanamo as well. Well, my mission while I was down there became to make sure that another Abu Ghraib didn't happen. And I felt I had a role to play in ensuring that we complied with the rule of law, the law of war. My job was to start tracking allegations of abuse going back to the beginning of the camp. No matter how they characterize the conflict, we're to treat detainees or those we detain humanely. What I observed, that we were still not complying with the law of war. The name Diane Beaver came up because she wrote the original memo to request these enhanced interrogation techniques. One of the interrogators was concerned about the techniques that were authorized. That's something that I would send to him for reference. The people that were there clearly were not the worst of the worst. And not everybody should have been there. Clearly they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time and sold to the U.S. or turned over to the U.S. for bounties. Murat Kurnaz was one of them. My job is to comport with the law and make sure my commanders, my chain of command, complies with the law. So on that professional level, of course, I gotta care because that's my job. But on a personal level, I'm a human being. I don't get joy out of seeing other human beings suffer. The more I looked into it, the more I realized it doesn't matter what you advise your commanders. Those concerns aren't gonna leave the island. It's not gonna go up the chain. So my role to advise commanders on the proper way forward is basically futile. It's not gonna get it anywhere. That was the moment that I decided, okay, there was something I had to do. There's just no way I'm gonna be able to do it through proper channels, was my thought process. I had to do it surreptitiously.
Da haben die Amerikaner mich über Sachen gefragt, was ich in Deutschland getan habe. Und zwar über Dinge und Telefonnummern ausgefragt, die kein anderer außer hier in Deutschland gewusst hat. So war ich davon überzeugt, dass die Amis mit der deutschen Polizei in Kontakt gewesen sind.
Man macht sich ja in der Verdachtsfallbearbeitung dann so Schaubilder, wo man sagt, wer kennt wen und wo sind die Verknüpfungspunkte.
Die Eurocheck-Karte, mit der die Flugkarten für Murat Kurnaz hier in Bremen bezahlt worden waren, ist am 9.09.2001 schon mal aufgetaucht, und zwar in Hamburg, an einem Bankautomaten unweit der Al-Quds-Moschee, in dem die Attentäter verkehrten. Die Karte war eine Besonderheit. Das war ein Umstand, der uns auch aufmerken ließ.
Es war ein Unbehagen bei allen, die sich damit beschäftigten, da muss irgendwas muss ja da dran sein. Und dann kommt man oft natürlich dazu, aha, der war da auch mal und der war gleichzeitig da und da hat man eine Telefonnummer gefunden. Und dann wirkt das auf den ersten Blick logisch.
Das ging jahrelang so weiter, dass ich dann mal wieder verhört worden bin. So habe ich gesagt, ich mache das nicht mehr. Wenn ihr es nochmal hören möchtet, dann spult einfach die Bänder zurück, die ihr habt, und hört es euch einfach nochmal an. Da hat sich nichts geändert. Die haben mich dafür bestraft, die haben mich dafür hungern lassen, die haben mir kein Wasser gegeben, die haben alles Mögliche versucht, aber ich habe kein einziges Wort mehr gesagt.
In a blow to the US government, the Supreme Court ruled today that the prisoners at Guantanamo have the right to legally challenge their detention in US courts.
What we want is an immediate cessation of conditions that are cruel, inhuman, or degrading, or that constitute torture.
Barbara Olshansky, a human rights lawyer involved in obtaining the landmark ruling, is now demanding the release of all detainee names so that they can have their day in court. The government has so far refused to release the names.
Sub 20, do we know how many we have?
You sure?
Will you tell us?
Not today. While it seems like a perfectly reasonable request that, gee, why don't you just give us all the names, it may not be.
That is what I ask of you today.
Barbara Olshansky. I never heard of her or knew of her until Guantanamo.
You have the power to restore the moral underpinnings of our democracy. You must use it. Please, that's what I ask of you.
It was like a wake-up call. I mean, it was like, because I've been submerged in the stonewalling efforts of my government, of my colleagues there at Gitmo, and going along with that stonewalling and placing these obstacles in the way of these attorneys who were trying to get that information. Nearing the end of my tour there, something was going to be done. It's going to have to be done by me, and it's going to have a short amount of time in doing it. Barbara Olshansky wants the names. I know where I get the names. They inspect your bags, they look at your things, and you have something like that, they're going to prosecute you. And I knew, a list of names, they're not going to let me off the island with that. So figuring out a way, how am I going to get it off of the island? And that's when I decided I would minimize regular pieces of paper. I could shrink it enough to where I could put it in a card and mail it off the island. My thinking was, when I went through the postal system, was that whoever's handling that card would, if it's a little bit thick, would think that maybe it's photos or something inside of it, which is not uncommon. And it just happened to be, since it was January, the next holiday coming up was Valentine's Day. So when I went shopping at the exchange for my card, it ended up happening to be this droopy-eyed Chihuahua dog. And I wasn't sure I was going to do it. It was just something I stayed awake at night sometimes thinking, should I go through with it, should I not? I'm putting my own future on the line, plus my wife's and my daughter's. The three individuals compared to 550 plus. I'm going to leave. They're going to be left behind and maybe never have their day in court. And I retrieved the list, put it in the card, walked out of the office, drove down to the post office and dropped it in the box. I felt I was on the right side of things and wasn't on the wrong side anymore. I didn't try to track it in the news to see if anything came up. I just let it go and was moving on.
Lieutenant Commander Diaz had no right to do what he did. When you're that low on the totem pole, when you're at the bottom, that you think you know best, sitting on Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, not at the White House, at interagency meetings with the State Department, the Department of Justice, other cabinet officials, such as Department of Defense and other very senior, experienced lawyers. But you know best. For the entire government, there should have been no confusion.
Ooh, get a fire.
Well, for dessert, we still have strawberry and shortcake, ice cream cake for Mother's Day.
I have a toast here for retired Lieutenant Colonel Diane Beaver, a heck of a good friend, a good daughter, and who served her country with distinction. Thank you very much for your service.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Alive to tell about it.
Alive to tell about it. What did you do while you were there, though?
You know, you have a number of different things where the different services guys, you know, and gals get into trouble.
Right.
We actually had an Army Lieutenant Colonel who married, of course, reservist, who I guess had been with some prostitutes and had a certain disease, and the woman he had an affair with on the island got it.
No.
And so this guy explains to his wife that he got it from detainees while washing his hands. So she calls us to find out if that's possible. Who are you? The wife of who?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of medical care, they're getting a lot of preventive medical care that they obviously would never receive in their home countries.
Mm-hmm.
Flu shots. I mean, you know, in a population where people live close together, you've got to give all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
All sorts of medical care like that, colonoscopies, you name it.
Oh, that's cool.
So some Americans don't get even that
I was
level of
gonna
care.
say, the prisons here, we don't get that good of care.
Right. I heard the schmeck good. Yeah, that's what these are gonna do.
They want attention.
Oh my gosh.
These last 5 years, she's been on a roller coaster. When, you know, you're interrogating people that are, you know, trying to destroy the way of life, that had just crashed planes into buildings, and they start screaming at the top of their lungs or reciting, you know, verses from the Quran, and you gag them. Is that torture? You know, well, you know, that's a very complicated question. And people ran from that. And so she just did her job because she loves her country. So, you know, whereas higher ups would know that they don't want to be, that could be used against them later. And it's exactly what happened. As a result, she was left holding the bag.
For months, the U.S. government was facing relentless criticism over torture allegations at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo. They decided it was time for damage control. In a carefully orchestrated press conference, they aimed to demonstrate that there was no connection between the abuses at Abu Ghraib and government policy, and that the aggressive techniques at Guantanamo came from the bottom up and not the White House. To prove their point, they released a confidential memo that carried a single signature.
Of course, my memo was right there. Clearly, the intent was to shift the blame. Well, of course, I thought it was my duty, and it didn't bother me at all to put it in writing. But then you see, as it went up the chain, all these other senior lawyers never put a thing in writing. And so you think, oh, okay, I guess they were smart and I was stupid. But I never thought about any sort of political ramifications or, I mean, all I thought about was supporting my command. But that's what put me out in the press and in the criticism and in books and every torture book you can think of and every, you know, it's horrible from that standpoint that I'm taking the heat for the administration.
Colonel Beaver, let me start with you. Did you expect that your opinion would not be the one that would be relied upon?
No, sir. In fact, one of the reasons...
No, sir.
Sorry.
My question was,
I'm sorry.
Were you surprised that your opinion became the opinion that was relied upon? Did you expect... Shocked.
I never received a phone call. I never received an email. I never received anything asking me anything like, are you a lunatic? What were you thinking? Or, you know, great opinion. Or I received nothing
You come across in this as being eager to have these techniques used.
And it says, under Category 2, using detainee phobias such as fear of dogs. Now, I'm trying to figure out as a lawyer how removal of clothing and using fear of dogs does not envision naked people, and by the way, the hood's in there too, naked people having dogs sicked on them.
That would have never happened. I mean, that's just not professional. That indicates something.
But it did happen.
It did not happen, ma'am.
Well, dogs were used with naked people.
Do you doubt that it happened?
If an investigator found that it happened, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying I was not aware of it at the time.
Well, so when you said this didn't happen at Guantanamo Bay, you're not right.
What I meant was I didn't approve anything. I wrote a legal opinion. So whatever the commander approved, it would be applied in a manner to prevent it from being used abusively.
You felt you were hung out a bit?
I understood at the time I was hung out.
Lieutenant Colonel Beaver, I think I understand better than I've ever understood the role you played in this. And bottom line, no one made you write this memo. That was your own work product, correct?
It would not have been appropriate for me to simply say no legal objection or no comment, and so.
But there was no pressure for you to reach the conclusion?
No, there was no pressure. It was generated by me and my staff.
Thank you. Do you think it's an accident that the techniques that we're talking about in Guantanamo Bay wound up migrating to Iraq?
They were treated humanely within the bounds of the law. That's why I believe there was no violation of the law, despite what others may believe. Detainees were beaten to death in Bagram, Afghanistan. That happened in December.
The first time in my life I've seen Madrid, absolute silence. I was asked to take part in this case just hours after the bomb attack. Our main goal was to get justice for the victims and also to convict the people who have done this. This was the most important trial in Spain ever. These people were, without a doubt, Al-Qaeda.
Nosotros sí amamos la vida y ellos son la muerte, porque han traído la muerte, pero vencer va a vencer el Estado de Derecho, a pesar de las críticas acérrimas que se le han hecho incluso dentro de esta misma sala.
I was sitting in front of them for 5 miles, 2 meters away from them. And when I was cross-examining people, I was making sure that they got the message, which means 30 years. That's the maximum time in prison in Spain. I will get you 30 years. They called me the fat little bastard of the corner. During that process is when I really found out what was in Guantanamo going on. Before that, I saw it on the news, and for me it was, okay, they were bringing people to a new jail. I wasn't very concerned about that until I really came into the details. And then I said, hold on. I mean, these people that may be related to Madrid bomb attack, we cannot even cross-examine them because they have been tortured. So the Bush administration is destroying our cases because they took these people to Guantanamo. I start digging, and then we present the case to the court, and they say, oh yes, this is a criminal offense.
President Obama was asked about the Spanish investigation and accusations surrounding torture tactics that were used at Guantanamo Bay.
I have not had direct conversations with the Spanish government about these issues. My team has been in communications with them.
Developments in Spain put the president in a very real bind. Gonzalo Boyer, the prosecutor on the case, has Spanish law on his side. It allows him to seek arrest warrants for US officials accused of violating international law. Those indicted could face arrest when traveling abroad.
We're going against everybody who has been involved in Guantanamo, from top to bottom. But this would have never happened without the lawyers. In this criminal conspiracy, they're a key factor. Ahora, más cosas. Vamos a estudiar el tema Beaver. Porque claro, ella participó en los interrogatorios, pero participó como Jack, es decir, detrás de la ventana.
Me causa preocupación, no le resto cualidad de torturadora, pero me parece a mí que se quede la responsabilidad ahí es fácil.
No, pero no perdamos la perspectiva. O sea, esta tía es fundamental. Diane Beaver was a tool. When you don't need the tools anymore, you just throw it down. And that's what they have done with her. She should come here and tell us what she knows.
Oh, Samson. So good? Samson. There we go. I heard about what the Spanish are doing, but it doesn't matter what you say. They believe torture occurred at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Torture never occurred at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, whether it's any definition of that particular term. My friends and family here, as well as anybody who knows me, knows that I would never support torturing detainees or doing anything illegal. All we did was try to protect America and save American lives. And it's just sad that there are those who want to characterize our service as something bad or wrong or evil.
Ich dachte wirklich, dass die Menschen in der Außenwelt nichts von Guantanamo wissen, dass es Gefangene dort gibt. Sie sagen, du wirst hier für immer bleiben und wirst nie wieder nach Hause gehen. Sie nutzen das aus, um mich psychisch zu brechen. Es gab Situationen, wo ich richtig fertig war.
Ich kann meinen Sohn nicht dort sterben lassen. Ich müsste ihm irgendwie helfen.
Washington 2004, auch Rabbi Kornas hat einen langen Kampf hinter sich. Zusammen mit dem Bremer Anwalt Bernhard Docker hat sie immer wieder auf das Schicksal ihres Sohnes hingewiesen, auf den Rechtsbruch.
Als eine Hausfrau, ich habe Angst gehabt, so viele vor die Kamera zu stellen. Ich rede lieber gar nicht. Und die Vanessa Redgrave haben mich umarmt. Die haben gesagt, keine Angst, wir sind bei dir.
Das ist ja keine Menschlichkeit, was die da mit den Gefangenen machen.
Er hat mir auch ein bisschen Hoffnung gegeben dabei. Dann stand ich fast freiwillig vor Kamera. So sind wir weitergekommen. Ja, aber ein deutscher Außenminister wollte ihn nicht reinlassen. Die haben für ihn nichts eingesetzt, nur weil er Ausländer ist. Ach, wie soll ich sagen? Ich wusste ganz genau, dass die mir nicht helfen würden.
Und wenn der dann nicht die deutsche Staatsangehörigkeit hat, ist es natürlich leicht zu sagen, ja, aber wir wollen den hier nicht mehr haben. Das wollte man halten, diese Linie. Und über die hat sich dann die Bundeskanzlerin hinweggesetzt und gesagt, ich mache dieser ganzen Geschichte ein Ende und bringt den Jungen zurück. So. Und dann kam er dann hier an eines Tages mit dem Flugzeug.
Meine Familie wartete auf mich. Die erste war meine Mutter. Sie hat mich umarmt und gar nicht mehr losgelassen. Sie hat auch geweint. Ich gehe mal davon aus, dass sie vor Freude geweint hat. Es ist einfach unbeschreiblich schön. Das kann man nicht in Worten fassen. Ich bin in Folterhaft gewesen und jetzt bin ich wieder frei.
Er kam zurück. Natürlich mit langem Bart und dennoch so lange Haar. Er konnte kaum richtig laufen, gerade laufen. Er hat nur gehumpelt. Ich wusste ganz genau, dass er in Kette gelegen hat. Aber seine Augen fliegen immer so hin und her. Er hat solche komischen Blick. So schöne blaue Augen. Hat sich verdunkelt. Wie fast war es schwarze Augen, hat er Farbe gekriegt. Er hat sich geältert, kann ich so sagen. Er ist älter geworden. Er hat seine ganze Jugend dabei verloren. Helal da burada, helal da var diyorsun.
Yoktur.
Yok mudur?
Helal nereden çıktı? Helal kesim değil.
Er ist immer so nervös. Ich habe ihm gesagt, geh mal zu Psychologen. Er müsste solche Schwierigkeiten mit jemandem teilen. Er will eigenes Kopf. Er will von jemandem nichts hören. Er ist zu stolz. Ja, das ist Murat. Der ist so, ja.
Es ist eigentlich alles gleich geblieben, nur dass ich einige Erfahrungen habe, was ich nicht mit meiner Familie bespreche, weil sie das nicht hören möchten. So.
Pakistan gereist ist, um von dort aus an der Seite der Taliban in Afghanistan gegen die USA zu kämpfen. Kurnas Flugticket wurde von einem Mann bezahlt, der Kontakt zu den Taliban in Afghanistan unterhielt. Und seinem Begleiter, der am Flughafen Frankfurt festgenommen wurde, wird hohe Gewaltbereitschaft
Kurnas sei schon vor dem Anschlag auf das World Trade Center indoktriniert worden zur Kampfbereitschaft bis hin zum Dschihad, dem Heiligen Krieg.
Rabie Kurnat glaubt, der unheilvolle Einfluss von Murats neuen arabischen Freunden hat den Jungen vom rechten Pfad abgebracht.
Ja. Mir hat er nicht viel erzählt, aber da hat jemand sein Gehirn gewaschen.
Ich weiß sehr gut darüber Bescheid, dass meine Mutter einige Sachen der Medien erzählt hat, was die Amerikaner dann auch als Beweisstück gegen mich benutzt haben. Auch Sachen einfach so in die Welt gesetzt hat, was nicht stimmt, weil sie der Meinung war, dass ich dadurch schneller nach Hause kommen könnte. Damit hat sie natürlich mich in Schwierigkeit gebracht.
Einmal habe ich ihn beschuldigt. Ist das meine Fehler, Murat, dass du weg warst oder was? Ne? Er hat gesagt, ja, war deine Fehler. Er hat das gesagt, ja. Aber ich wollte, als Mutter wollte ich ihn ja nur freikriegen.
Hey abi hoş geldiniz. Hoş bulduk. Değil misiniz?
Evet, Murat.
Kameradan görmüştük televizyonlarda. Sakallı makaraydınız.
Sen nasılsın?
Ne oldu iyiyiz? Bana sağlık karış.
Evet, evet.
Nasıl oldu ya o olaylar? Şeyler vardı hep geçti.
Şimdi hiç bu isim için bile hiç isminizi değiştirmek aklınızdan geçti mi böyle?
Var öyle bir hakkım var da şimdi anam babam bana koyduğu ismi de değişmek de istemedim biliyor musun? Daha doğrusu. Değişebilir tabii böyle bir hakkım var da.
Bence abi sizin değişmeye zaten suçsuzsunuz. Bu isminizden kalın.
Benim için utanç yok ama dediğim gibi iş konusundan bayağı bir...
Mesela ben de yani gelip bana desen ben iş arıyorum. Çalışabilir miyim? Ben derim tamam abi gel. Ama nasıl Murat kurnaz dediğin zaman mecbur bir korku insanın içine giriyor.
Çünkü tanımadığın zaman tabii ki daha da normal.
Şimdi senin şeyin değil, belki sen izleniyorsun. Senin sayende bu sefer benim mekanım izlenir, müşterim rahatsız olur.
Evet, haklısın. Aynı ama her yerde başıma geliyor.
A whole year later, after I left Gitmo, my commanding officer was alerted that there was an investigation and that I was the focus of it. At that point, I knew, okay, this is the list that I sent. This is relating to that list. When they interrogated me, they proceeded to take major case prints of my fingers, my hands, my palms, to compare it to the documents that they retrieved from Barbara Olshansky. And then they put me through a series of handwriting samples. So I had to do the return address of Gitmo and writing Barbara Olshansky 20 different times. I knew this was going to be a serious chain of events to come. If I got court-martialed, it's going to impact me. I'd be prosecuted, but it's going to impact my wife, my daughter.
What's he trying to say here? Is he trying to say he has a legal excuse that it was silly to classify this material? He could substitute his judgment for the judgment of the relevant authorities, that he was just a poor schlemiel who didn't know anything about the status of this information, or what?
The jury only heard the government's version of events. We were denied. The defense was denied presenting any evidence that we wanted to present. I could not testify about my true motivations, why I did what I did, because the judge did not allow that. The jury came back with confinement for 6 months. And I heard the dismissal and it immediately clicked to me, okay, that's it, retirement's gone, this is a lifelong thing. So no income. Immediately after, I was taken away and locked up and separated from my family. We got to the confinement facility. And that's where they came with the waistband with the chains, and they cuffed my hands together. I mean, you had to stay awake from 5 a.m. till lights out at 10 p.m. Trying to stay awake and just staring straight ahead at the wall. I mean, the chip paint and the primer or different colored paint beneath it start taking on characters, and your mind starts hallucinating, and I think I start dreaming. I was stripped all the way down, full nudity, so that they can inspect my body. They take their sweet time about it. It's part of the humiliating effect that they try to have on people. I mean, obviously they didn't recreate the wheel when they created Guantanamo. I mean, they used what they typically use in prisons.
Barbara Olshansky testified as a witness for the government against Matt Diaz during his trial. After receiving his list, she had turned it over to the state authorities. Olshansky thought it was a hoax.
Was dort erlebt hat und gelitten hat, möchte ich nichts wissen. Ich frage nur, Schatz, wie geht es dir? Und ich umarme ihn und das reicht mir auch. Şuna anneciğim, şey kolon bir.
Ben taslarım şeyi.
Ya nasıl getirecektim de. Dedim hadi bakayım bu olsun. Tadı güzel oldu.
Ne sen ye, içme mi?
Biz içtik de.
Hı?
Biz içtik de. Bir yemek yapacağım. Tamam karıştırıp durma oğlum. Ses çok şey. Tık tık başım ağrıdı. Şeye ne zaman gidiyorsunuz? Madrid'e mi? Ne zaman gidiyorsunuz? Belli mi? Gideceğiz zaman.
Belli. Yakında gideceğiz işte.
Ne yapacaksınız orada? Ne mahkemesi Murat? Hakikat ben hiç anlamıyorum.
George Bush'a karşı nasıl olursa mahkemeye çıkacağım. Şahitlik yapacağım. Ondan sonra Donald Rumsfeld'e falan karşı.
Neden şeyde Madrid'de oluyor?
Niye mi?
He.
Orada bir avukat var. Davayı başlayacak.
Hayırlı yolculuk diyeyim. Kendinize iyi bakın. İnşallah mahkemede iyi bir şeyler sonuç elde edersiniz.
İnşallah avukatla bir tanışalım da.
İnşallah.
Sonra bakarız. Oldu, selam söyle çocuklara, herkese.
Aleykümselam.
Hadi
Söylerim
selam.
anneciğim. Hadi hayırlı yolculuk. Kendinize iyi bakın.
Entre otras cosas, nos vamos a reunir con Murat Kurnaz. Kurnaz escribió un libro que, bueno, lamentablemente, como siempre, no habláis un idioma civilizado, pero evidentemente...
Impresionante.
¿Cuál es eso?
La foto de la salida de...
¿Sabes qué edad tenía ahí? 25 años.
Te amo.
¿No? 25. Golpeadillo, ¿eh?
Sí. Sí, sí.
No, quita esa foto. A mí esa foto me pone malo.
Me está sonando un móvil.
It came to me. Every time I read one of these memos, every time I read a history of somebody, or when I'm cross-examining a victim of torture, I remember what had happened to me.
The action's being driven by a man named Gonzalo Boye, a radical right lawyer in Madrid. Boye served almost 8 years in a Spanish prison for collaborating with terrorists. This is a kangaroo court set up by a terrorist guy.
I was convicted, in my opinion, wrongly convicted, for a kidnap by a terrorist group. And I spent 7 years, 11 months, and 3 days in prison. In Spain at that time, policemen used torture. I thought somebody was cutting my back with a knife. And it was a stick with electricity that they were using. The sense of being cut with a sharp knife, I will remember for my whole life. Because nobody who has been tortured forget that. Nobody. It's impossible. But what is possible and what's necessary is that you pass the page. If you don't pass the page, you're worthless for the society, for your family, and for yourself.
Vieles, was mir passiert ist, dass das von Rechtsanwälten bestimmt wurde. Davon wusste ich gar nichts. Solche Art von Rechtsanwälte sind Verbrecher, die auch zur Rechenschaft gezogen werden müssen und auch verurteilt werden müssen. Für eine Entschuldigung ist es sowieso zu spät. Eine Entschuldigung nehme ich nicht mehr an.
Okie dokie, here we go. We go for dog obedience school, huh? I feel frozen, but at some point, you do have to leave Guantanamo behind. What am I going to do for the rest of my life? I'm too young to just be retired. I knew if I owned my own business, I had to do something that I would be good at. You're too far up. Back. Dang it, Samson. You know you're not supposed to be this far up. Dog daycare businesses came up, and I thought, well, like many jobs in the military I've had, I think, well, how hard can that be? Okay, dogs, and they eat, and they poop, and they sleep, and I'm thinking, I probably could do that.
All right, now I'll show you grooming. It's definitely an option that we recommend when you have them here, because when they get outside, they can get pretty stinky.
Right.
Being out in the pools and stuff like that, especially with the...
just bathing.
Yeah. If you wanted to get like a tidy, if that's appropriate for your dog, which you could, do an outline for a golden. Then they have the TVs that, we play Animal Planet, so they can kind of feel like they're at home and with other animals.
Watch the lions eat things.
I think he'll like it.
Yes. Well, dog daycare businesses had a standard operating procedure that was approximately 400 pages long that covered everything you could think of. And I thought, well, this is probably meant for me because this is something I understand, an SOP, a structure.
I could also show you the villas, which are luxury suites,
yes,
in case you wanted to upgrade.
Yes.
And there's only 10 of these rooms, so these guys fill up really quickly.
When I got back from prison, I was being stripped of all of my credentials that qualify me to be a lawyer. So I was no longer allowed to practice in any capacity. Add to that the conviction. It's hard to find employers that will take you in. For my colleagues, I became somebody to no longer associate with. I was basically persona non grata. The house has been foreclosed. The car has been repossessed.
Yes, Mr. Dias, this is J.C. at the credit union. It's very important that you give us a call back immediately today regarding your account.
I'm getting collection calls daily. And I'm doing the best I can, paying the bills that I can pay. It's keeping me above water for now. And just wait. I mean, I know there's family out there. Worst comes to worst, I'm gonna find, they have a room for me. That's what it'll come to. Hey, bud.
Hey, Daddy.
What you doing?
I don't like being here by myself.
Why not?
Because
Because why?
empty. Everything echoes.
What about the cats?
I don't know. I called a shelter yesterday,
And what did they say?
and they told me they're not going to do anything but kill my dog.
Ay. If I didn't do what I did to resolve the conviction and the loss of income and savings and all of that, Anna would probably be attending college right now. With the prepaid college tuition that I had saved up for her, that had been used not only to get through my case, but to get through the aftermath of that and continue living for as long as I could. And that had its domino effect. My ex-wife got behind in her mortgage, and things went downhill for her to where they're losing their house as well. Anna, within a matter of months from now, could also herself be homeless. This is the actual complaint. Basically showing that the mortgage hasn't been paid, so they're trying to recover the property. It's just basically showing if you wanted to get current, what the bank would want is $14,273.42. What about school?
I want to go, but I don't have the money.
Mm-hmm. Grants and loans, like everybody else does. Go in debt.
I don't want to put myself in that situation. I mean, even before, I was able to call him on the phone and just, hey, Dad, I think I need like $50 for this or for that, you know? And now I can't do that. I'm more willing to send him money now than him giving me money. He left on my Facebook page one day that I'm still his reason of living. He's really sweet, you know? Maybe one day down the line, I'll marry somebody like my dad.
It's loud.
People try saying that he was down in Guantanamo, he can be classified as a terrorist.
Here's the fridge.
The government should hang my dad.
Prosecutor said he didn't want me wearing it anymore, especially on Memorial Day parades. Isn't Memorial Day around the corner here? Should put it on and go march in a parade. I'm still active duty. Yeah, it still fits, doesn't it?
You don't have the hat?
There's definitely a sense of shame in letting her down. That's the downside of taking the actions I took, or that's the downside of being the raised I was and having the conscience I had.
En algún momento de la conversación, dependiendo de lo que estemos hablando, yo sí les pediría que nos dejasen, porque, claro, son temas muy íntimos y que seguramente para él son incómodos de valorar ante una mujer.
Supongo que tendrá... ¿Está en tratamiento psicológico?
No lo sé.
No
Nadie
sé.
ha querido aceptar, o la mayoría no quieren aceptar tratamiento.
I would like to go to Breuer.
Schon dich kennenzulernen, endlich. Ja? Ich freue mich, dass du hier bist.
Ich freue mich auch sehr, dich
Ja, ich habe mit einem Armband geredet, aber das war gut, dich zu sehen. Und das sind meine Kollegen, Julia und Isabel.
Hi. I don't touch female hands before because of religious purpose.
Okay, él dice que no, que por motivos religiosos no estrecha las manos a las mujeres, no por rechazarte, sino das allererste ist, um dir zu erklären, warum wir das machen. Ich meine, was da passieren ist, soll nie wieder passieren. Wir möchten gerne, dass du auch vor dem Gericht gehst und eine Aussage machst. Wir arbeiten als Juristen hier auf der Grund, dass alles, was in Guantanamo passiert hat, ist eine systematische Planung, um Leute zu foltern.
Wo ich in Guantanamo angekommen bin, da war es schon komplett professionell.
In Guantanamo war professionell.
Ja, da haben die Verhörer auch aufgepasst, dass sie nicht selber foltern, sondern haben foltern lassen.
Hast du je diese Dokumente gesehen? Weißt du, wie dein Leben sich geändert hat durch diesen Dokument?
Ehrlich gesagt, nicht.
Alles, was du mir voraus erzählt hast, ist hier.
Aha.
Das ist kalt auf Papier, schwarz-weiß. For instance, hier, removal of clothing. Du hast gesagt, dass sie hätten dich nackt gelassen in deiner Zelle. Das war geplant auch. Ich werde dir Namen erwähnen. You, for instance, zum Beispiel. Beaver.
Beaver ist mir bekannt.
Diane Beaver, very significant in what you have suffered in these years. Sie hat gesagt, dass das war korrekt durch das Gesetz in den USA. Und das ist falsch. Und ich habe dich vielleicht nie gesehen auch. Aber die waren sehr wichtig, in was alles du gelitten hast. Von Rumsfeld zu der Colonel Beaver. Unser Prozess wird sehr lange dauern.
Kann sein.
Aber wir müssen da durchgehen. Bist du bereit für sowas?
Ich bin auf jeden Fall bereit. Ich hoffe es ganz stark, dass es auch dazu kommt. Und zwar bald.
Let me just move to the parts that I have the most problems with, and that's, basically any sort of number crunching about what your expectations are.
I mean, you can tell you've done the research and everything. The next big decision is to take the plunge. Because when you're starting a new business, in the end, it's about risk, and so you have to leave the baggage behind.
I just didn't want to make any decision about my career. And I don't even say fear, maybe it's the fear of making the wrong decision without that sort of structure to fall back on.
For someone who's devoted her whole life to her country and has a tremendous sense of pride and everything else, it's just, as a family member, it breaks your heart. And so, so for us and for her, we want her to be able to move on.
It's difficult to know when I don't know how to explain this. These witch hunts that were going on in the military, if a guy called you a dyke, nothing was done to that person, and there was no one you could say anything to. And so it was very difficult, particularly, if you're doing better than the men. Obviously, an easy way to take a cheap shot at you is to question your sexual orientation. What, are you going to wear a sign that says, "I'm straight, I'm not a homosexual"? I was very lonely in the military because I was afraid of what people might say about me. I let that control me for too many years of my life. I've just never dated a lot, or perhaps being married was just not meant for me. So I can't explain that. I'm sure there's many reasons, but after a while, you can't let it bother you because God has a plan for everyone. And so I think, okay, maybe that day will come for me, but it hasn't come. And so it bothers me, but it's just something I just can't explain.
¿Te la imaginas detrás de un cristal? Mirando cómo tortura.
Igual digo una tontería, pero ¿y por qué en vez de ir contra ella, utilizarla a nuestro favor?
¿Qué testigo protegido?
¿Eh?
Pero se la podemos jugar, sí, claro. Ahora.
No me refiero a jugársela, pero va a ser más útil si ella pudiese venir a declarar bajo una protección.
Tendríamos que citarla como testigo.
Claro, como testigo y...
Pero el problema que tenemos es el siguiente. Mira, con lo que ella ha declarado aquí, nosotros nos podrían acusar de una deslealtad procesal si la invitamos a participar como testigo y termina imputada. Pero yo leí
no creo
en
que...
algún sitio, yo leí que a esta señora le gustaba mucho España, ¿eh?
Bueno, pues...
Sí, usted habría...
Hacemos un reclamo turístico para ella.
Hast du ein Gerichtsurteil gehabt? Was
Ja, das war meine Hoffnung. Ich hatte eine Gerichtsverhandlung gehabt und das alles ging falsch. Alles ging verkehrt. Ich habe gesagt, das habe ich nicht gemacht. Ist egal.
Ist egal, ja?
Es war egal.
Ja, es war egal.
Weißt du, das ist so wie als du in Guantanamo warst. Es war egal, was du sagtest. Nichts hilft. Verstehst du? Du sagst, ich war 16 Jahre alt, ich war noch an der Schule. Egal.
Ist immer noch so, dass die Leute glauben, du hast damit zu tun gehabt?
Ja.
Also, sobald Leute meinen Namen hören, versuchen sie halt so schnell wie möglich von mir wegzukommen.
Ja. Jeder hat, wir sagen hier in Spanien, dass jeder hat ihr eigenes Buch, um das Leben zu füllen. Aber Aber wenn du so viele Jahre und so viel Stress gewesen bist, am Ende des Tages, wir bezahlen eine Rechnung. Es ist sehr schwer, weil das sind so viele wounds, you know. There are many things to heal. Und die kannst du vergessen, diese 5 Jahre. Oh, qué bueno. Gracias, Dani. Frucht.
Ja, gracias.
Zum Wohl.
Ja, also ich stoße nicht an, aber...
Aber du weißt, das stimmt. Bist du je in den Stierkämpfen gewesen?
Nein.
Hey, das ist gut. Ja? Ja. Beide, der Bullen und der Stierkämpfer. Gut, gut, gut. Hey!
Alles klar.
Ja, ich wünsche dir eine gute Reise. Sei vorsichtig.
Ich danke dir für alles.
We have time. We will get them all into prison. Maybe next year, maybe in 20 years. But we are ready to spend the rest of our life in this cause. No problem. I'm going to stay here until I see justice.
I understand that I've been placed in these situations for a reason. Maybe I don't understand why. Perhaps it's because I have the ability to withstand what has happened. I'm glad I volunteered. I'm glad I was assigned to Guantanamo. I'm sure that was part of God's plan, even if I don't always understand it and I don't always agree with the outcome. But that's what happened, and I just really have no regrets.
The reason I enjoyed serving in the military, it's the only job I knew, the only life I knew for my entire adult life. My childhood was living in poverty. And I made a decision to join the military because otherwise I don't know what would have become of me. I had a sense of pride. I did everything to support the mission down there. I did what they wanted me to do, all but that one thing. That's the only thing that they disapproved of. Well, I'm not seeking any sympathy for that. I mean, I put myself in that position, but I mean, that is a reality. A consequence of acting on your conscience can sometimes have these types of results.
Ich glaube an das Schicksal und dass Gott uns mit bestimmten Sachen prüft. Guantanamo ist vielleicht eine Art Strafe, eine Art von Starkmachung fürs Rest des Lebens. Ich würde selber sagen, dass ich die Prüfung nicht bestanden habe.
Aşkım. Al şunlara basayım babası. Hey aşkım. Yok. Hı? Baksana bir bak bak. Bak kimler varmış orada. Bak bak bak bak. Hı? Bebişim. Hı? Kim varmış orada? Hı? Ne? Aşkım. Hı. Ateş mi geldi gözüne bakayım dedim. O ne?